Dear friends of the Tom Photo channel, I normally talk about color photography, but today is different. We see color and enjoy it, so it makes most sense for us to see color in the photographs too. So why do some of us, me included, still like black and white as well? And how to take black and white photos? These are the topics I'm covering in this video. We still like the 24 frames per second Hollywood movies that have washed out colors. Hollywood is still doing it regardless of the fact that technology would allow just about anything today. The reason is that we have learned to associate a particular set of properties with blockbuster movies. Bright colors and fast frame rate will look like someone's home video. This brings me to the first reason black and white is considered great. This is where photography comes from. This is history. It has a nostalgic value, it looks artsy. A lot of it can be attributed to Ansel Adams, one of the greatest photo artists ever to live. I too love his work, and I have his book. Black and white reduces the complexity of the scene. This is often what color photography tries to do as well, but it is sometimes easier and often more powerful in black and white. Your eye is able to catch the essence of the photo faster. It is not always so, of course. It can also be a distinctive color of your subject that separates it from the background. With busy photos, it actually rather tends to be the color. So one could argue that black and white is more difficult because it doesn't always work. Color kind of always works. The result may not be spectacular, but it is okay. With monochrome, it is much more often either spectacular or it doesn't work at all. You need a different eye and a different mindset when you shoot black and white. I even find that I don't want to mix the two on the same photo session, or it gets too complicated for me. I look at different things when I shoot monochrome, and I think differently. Black and white photography can only rely on simple tonal differences and contrast. So I'm mainly after interesting contrast differences or interesting patterns when I do black and white photography. I might also enjoy it when the subject is not immediately recognizable to the viewer. I like secrecy and surprise more. People might also like black and white because it is not so common anymore, so it feels fresh. It gives the viewer a different perspective. They see things the way they normally don't see them. The photos will essentially ask them to pause for a minute and think about what they're seeing. These photos tickle their brain more. It makes them go, "Oh really? So there's another way to see it." Sometimes less is more. I like to say that black and white lets you do time travel. It feels like you are seeing something the way it used to be. You are not seeing recent additions and the decorations, but you are rather seeing the core of the scene, the part that matters the most and gives it its essence. Paintings work the same way. For me, monochrome photos stand between color photos and paintings, philosophically speaking. How would one go about black and white photography? One way is to use film, but in the modern day, this appeals to a relatively small number of people. Another way is to get a dedicated black and white camera such as Leica Q2 monochrome. Because it will not have a color filter on top of the sensor, you get better detail and better low light performance with these cameras than using your normal camera as black and white. This, however, comes at a huge cost, as these Leica cameras are anything but cheap. Most of us use normal cameras by either switching them to black and white mode or losing the colors in post-processing on the computer. I'm also doing both of these, but I prefer to use camera in the black and white mode. I'm talking about JPEG now. When shooting RAW, you'll have many more options available to you, and chances are that you can do a better job converting the image to black and white than the camera could. I don't know. In the film days, people used filters to enhance the contrast, yellow and orange filters being the most common. I'll have a separate video on that and how to use these filters in the digital era and if one should consider them. These days people use digital filters. My main camera for black and white is Fuji X-T30. It has the option to use yellow, red and green filters with black and white. In most landscape situations involving the sky and clouds, the red filter will give you the most drama. Digital filters will allow you to experiment with the filter settings very easily. My Fuji X-T30 and also many other Fuji cameras has the Acros film simulation. This is another black and white simulation, but it allows additional contrast. It will also introduce a fair amount of grain, as I talk about in my Fujifilm film simulation video. The grain will give it more classic look that people tend to like. Acros is my prime simulation, so I shoot JPEG when doing monochrome. I often find myself use the red digital filter, and I might like to add some contrast in post-processing too. Of course, contrast can also be added in the camera menu during photography. With Fujifilm cameras, just press the Q button and you are there. The highlight tone and shadow tone can be altered as well, depending on if you want more detail or less detail and more contrast. I do not change the tone settings too much. When I do it, I typically make the tonal curve more steep to lose some detail. This is exactly the opposite to what I like in my color photography. I often correct the white balance of my monochrome photo as if it was a color photo. I do this using GIMP, and I find it a powerful way of modifying monochrome images. It is kind of important to underexpose a little bit if you want to add contrast in post-processing. Your taste may be different from mine, but what I want to see is plenty of contrast and not so much detail in my black and white photos. Thank you for tuning in and listening to my semi-philosophical talk about black and white photography. Try it out yourself, it's a lot of fun. I'd also like to ask you to consider subscribing to my channel and leaving a like. Have a great day. Goodbye.